Hi, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio, and today I'm here to talk to you about our scrap project for 2025. Now we're going to combine a couple of different things to come together and create this scrap project, and I want to talk to you all about some of the difficulty I had in the very beginning and how I've had to kind of change gears entirely to come up with this, and how I'm using those pieces that I created for one method to work with another. We'll be right back and we'll get into the details. Well, hi and welcome back. When you're working in a studio or in your home and you're making several quilts a year, the one thing you're going to have a lot of is scraps. And over the years, those scraps begin to grow to a point where you have to begin to take a step to use those scraps in a project or maybe rehome them to another quilter. And today I'm talking about a scrap project that we're going to take on for the remainder of 2025. I have no idea how long this is going to take, and I want to make sure that we get a very good variety of fabrics in this, so it really gives you that true scrap value. Now, it's not a scrap buster, and let me tell you what I mean by that. Sometimes there are scrap projects that are scrap busters, and the purpose of that is to use as many scraps as you can, so you kind of reduce the quantity of extra fabrics that you have. And those projects are going to be heavily into the scraps, whereas the one we're doing is going to use our scraps in this project, but we're also purchasing some fabric to go along with that. Now, I purchased this fabric right here. This is just some plain white fabric, and I purchased this. Let me look at my handy little tag here. I've started doing this where I'm tagging especially my white fabric, to give me a lot of details about where I purchased it, what brand it is, whether it's been washed, how much was there, and so forth. So this is some white 100% cotton fabric that I purchased at Hobby Lobby, and of course I purchased it on sale. It's normally $5.99 a yard, which is a budget fabric, I would say, and of course they run the 40% discounts right now. So it was a really good buy. I bought 3 yards of this during that 40% off sale, specifically for this project in mind. And then I've made this tag, that gives you all that information, and then I've washed it and pressed it, so I've put pre-washed on the tag as well. And I've just attached it with a safety pin. It's a newer safety pin. Sometimes you have them, and after a while they begin to have that kind of tarnished look on them. I try not to use those because they could rust. So I'm trying to use a newer one so I know it'll last longer before that would happen. Now, what I've also done is I've also marked on here where it was made. And the one identifying mark on this fabric is in the selvage. It has a faint red line right there in the selvage. I noticed that some of the other no-name white fabric that I bought at Hobby Lobby last year had a blue thread that ran through. I don't know what the difference is, but it kind of helps me understand whether those fabrics are exactly the same, they're very similar, or they're completely different. So that's just my identifying labeling. Now let's talk about scraps, and I have a bunch of scraps here. And let's talk about the pattern that I'm going to use. I decided to use a Jack's chain pattern. It will use a lot of scraps. The scraps can be very small, and it really gives us a beautiful design. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. So what I did was I went online to try to find a free pattern. And I found one out there. In fact, it's really about the only one that I could find that was free. And I'm going to give you just a little glimpse at it so you can see it. And it gives you some basic information about how the pieces are put together. Basically, this pattern is a 9 square block, a 9 by 9 block. And let's see, do I have one somewhere? Here's one. This is a great example. It's a 9 by 9 block that's joined together with triangles. So there's 2. And it sits on a hexagon. So this is the basic construction of this block. Now, when I started, what I was thinking I was going to do was I was going to strip piece some scraps with a white, and then I was going to cut them up in little pieces like this, and I was going to join them together in blocks that were just that one fabric and the white. And I was going to use that, alternating the colors all around. Now this one you see was just a sample that I tried to sew on, so they're both the same. But I was going to do this strip piecing, and I tried to use the pattern pieces that I found here online. And they have you sew this together and then machine stitch or hand stitch all of these 1/4 inch seams using Y seams to construct them. Now, let me tell you, I spent an exasperating afternoon working on this. First of all, it's very time consuming to do all of those strips and put all those 9 blocks together, or 9 patch together. And then when you start sewing the triangles on, getting that first seam and that triangle on is fine. Although I did find that the size of the triangle compared to the size of the 9 patch was something just not quite right about that. And I struggled with that a lot. And then when I tried to take it one step further and hook it to that hexagon, it was awful. It was difficult to sew. It always had puckers in it. The seams didn't match up. The triangles were either too big or too small. It was just a nightmare. I really felt like after spending about 3 hours on it, chunking it all in the trash can and walking away. I was that frustrated. And then I was having lunch with someone, and we were talking about high school mathematics and algebra or pre-algebra and geometry and algebra and trigonomics, and just this whole focus about how in all those we use the basics all of our lives, right? And especially geometry. It was funny because most of the adults at the table had used geometry every day versus another form of math. And I got to thinking about addressing this project from the standpoint of geometry. A hexagon, a triangle, and a square. And they all had to have a 3-inch commonality. And once I put that into my brain, then I began to think, let's use the pattern as a guideline, but create our own templates. So that's what I did. I started out by creating, where is it? It's in the back of this, a hexagon with 3-inch sides. And a hexagon has got to have a certain angle here to do this. And this is 120 degrees. Each one of these angles is 120 degrees. So I created that first. 3 inches, 120 degrees. And then I created the little triangles. Now we know they're equilateral triangles. All 3 sides are 3 inches. And they have to be 60-degree angles. So I created those. And then I created the 3-inch squares. Now, I decided to make this EPP because it was going to be so much easier to connect all of those pieces in that one point using EPP. Because, I don't know, yeah, do we have one? Once you create the square, and let's stop there a minute. You can either create the square the way we were doing it before with the strip piecing and getting the 9 patch and then putting this 9 patch on your paper template and folding it over. It's going to take a little more sewing in the basting because you've got all those long pieces to put together, but it can be done. And then you create your triangle pieces the way you would normally do EPP. And then stitching them together, they come together so beautifully. Look at this. They match up just perfectly. And this is a 9 patch that I created and made a 9 patch 3-inch square. And we'll talk about that in just a minute because I do have some alternatives for that. And then you're going to take this and you're going to start hooking these pieces to the center piece. Here you go. This one, let's move some of this stuff. This one you're going to hook right here to this. And you can see even just sitting them together how close they are to matching. And when you start stitching that, and you can make those little micro adjustments in your stitching by pulling a stitch, shifting it down a little bit. So we can do that for those little tiny changes. But really, trust me, it went together so much better. Unless you are an expert at Y-seams or you just have an affinity for this type of pattern, I think you'll find it easier. Now, if you hate hand stitching and you hate EPP, it's not going to work. I would suggest you go the other route. And I would also suggest that you go out and find blogs and YouTube videos and any kind of resource you can find that can give you pointers on how to make it work better, because I struggled even finding resources for this. Okay, let's go back to the 9 patch, because you can either create the 9 patch as a single piece of fabric. Oops, I thought I had one of those somewhere. Here we go. We'll use this one. Single piece of fabric, and then you're going to fold it over your template. It's a 3-inch square, and you're going to stitch that. And something that I found helpful was when I stitched this and I basted the corners, I took this triangle and also stitched this to this, so it held it in place on all 4 corners. Now, if you are like I am and you've created a lot of pieces in a lot of different shapes, anticipating that you were going to machine stitch this, then you've got some 3s. And what I did with the 3s is I just cut a 1 by 3-inch template and stitched those around in the basting method. And on this one, I also put stitches to pull these together. Now, once you stitch this together to make a 9 patch and you put all that together and maybe you get to this point, then you're going to have to clip those threads to get that paper out. But by that point, they're going to be all sewn together. Now, the quandary that I have at this point is I've got 3, 4, 5, 6 of these blocks done. I probably have enough for a whole circle. And then I've got all of these random little things. So then I have to decide, do I want to cut more 1 inch by 3 inches and go ahead and sew that strip on here? The only problem with this is you're going to end up with a lot of pieces that are similar from block to block. If I'm making a big quilt, and when I say big, I'm going to say throw size sofa size, that's probably not going to be a problem because I can mix and match. Let's say we go with this. I can mix and match this with this color combination, with this color combination, with this color combination, and then maybe if I had 2 of these on the next one, I would do it with the red. So you're going to need to mix and match appropriately. Otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to make little tiny 1" by 1" squares that you will join together to get your blocks. So you would actually take 9 of those to get that block. Either way it will work. If you're doing this, you're going to have a lot more basting. If you're doing this, I'll tell you the basting here is a little more complicated. These are really straightforward and they go really fast. These are a little more complicated, but they can be done. Now, variations on Jack's chain. There are patterns shown that, like I said, use blocks that are all just two-tone. There are blocks that are multi-tone. And then there are also blocks or variations where they alter the pattern slightly so that the one that I'm going to do has combinations where they put 2 of these white triangles together like this. Now, the reason I chose to do that is that, first of all, it creates this illusion of these huge circles that come together. And that is a pattern or a look that you very rarely get in quilts unless you're doing something super custom. So that sparkly illusion of circles is very appealing to me. It also is highly dependent upon the background fabric to be the base of the quilt. So that's the pattern that I'm going after. And these fabrics, I'm going to use just about everything. The only thing I won't use is for the colored fabrics on the 9 patches. I'm not going to use anything white on white. The only white is going to be the background fabric and then the white in the 9 patch. But anything else is fair game as long as it's 100% cotton. I don't tend to mix 100% with a blend because they don't shrink and crinkle the same way. Cotton polys are not going to shrink, but just a little bit. And they're not going to give you that kind of puffy, well, I won't say puffy, that kind of wrinkledy, crinkledy feel. Cotton polys are going to stay puffy and they're going to be empty inside because they're more puffy than your batting. So it kind of gives you a different look. And that's why I don't like to intermingle them together except very occasionally. And then it's only for sentimental reasons where I have a piece of fabric that I might have used for something 20 years ago. I just want to put just a little piece of that in there. So that's going to be our project for 2025 as far as scraps go. It is another EPP project, and I feel like we're a little heavy on EPP. Right now, I am back working on our Spring Burst project. I've decided to add 1 more row of the white diamonds, and then we're going to start working on borders. And I will have a video about that very shortly. So I've got 2 EPP projects going, which means there's always something to hand sew. So we've got a lot going on here, but we have a lot of scraps too. And even with doing applique, where we do use some scraps in with purchased fabric, the amount of leftover fabric that I don't have enough to really work on a project with, but I have enough to do something like this. For example, I may have a long strip of this that was used for binding, and I'm trying to find a way that I could use something, that was the binding right there, that we can use this and use it instead of letting it sit. I have very limited storage here, so trying to keep that fabric moving through is very helpful. I hope this video was helpful for you. I know, had I seen something like this before I tried to do this with the machine and the Y seams, I probably could have gotten 3 hours back, but I didn't, and that's how you learn. And now I know that sometimes when you have a pattern that you can use EPP, if you like EPP, you should do it, because it is, for me, a more accurate way of doing things. And certainly with these Y seams, I just could not imagine making a huge quilt where every 3 inches you were doing a Y seam. It just didn't make sense to me. But like I said, if that's your thing, go for it. Anyway, I'm going to clean up this mess. I've worked on this a while. I've got a lot of little pieces put together. Right now I am cutting my own templates. I've got some just regular cardstock. And for example, the hexagons, I really don't think I'm going to need more than 3 or 4 of those at a time. And then the little pieces, as soon as I'm able to hook another section to this, then I can start taking these out and reusing them. I will have to cut some more, but they're not complicated pieces. They're just measuring, and you can always size up one just to the other one to see that you've got the right size. And the other thing is, if they're off by just like a pencil line, it's really not going to make that much of a difference, because you've got that flexibility to adjust it. And we're looking at just regular either 60-degree angles or 90-degree angles, and everything is very easy. Just be sure to use the same ruler all the way through, because rulers do have a tendency to be a little off from each other. That'll do it for today. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.